Hi everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. Now I want you to go meet me on Twitter at Santita J and on Facebook, Santita Jackson and Friends, because we have got to have this wonderful conversation about the legacy of slavery with America's good love doctor, Dr. Brenda Wade. Are you suffering from PTSS, post-traumatic slave syndrome? Well, the evidence suggests that we all are. Black, white, brown, yellow, and red. And we hear so many of the stereotypes about African Americans, and people ask the question, what's wrong with you people? Well, there is something wrong. There was a breaking of our people that occurred. And we are here to reveal it so that we can heal it. We welcome back to our show Dr. Brenda Wade, America's Good Love Doctor. Welcome
thank you.
back.
Thank you, Santita.
Blessings
It's
to
an
you.
honor to work with you. I just love your open, curious mind, because we can have conversations we're not going to have anywhere else, and I love that.
Oh, thank you so much. You've been such a blessing to me for so many years, and so
Thank
many
you.
of us. And I want to invite everyone to come and join us on this teleconference the first Tuesday
Yes.
in December, December 3rd. Go to, of course, you can meet me on Twitter, you can meet me on Facebook, Santita Jackson and Friends, but go to www.drbrendaWade.com. The first Tuesday, December 3rd, we're talking about unchaining our love.
And that's
How
where
can we do
people
that?
can register.
Okay.
I just want them, you can register at the www.drbrendaWade.com. And when we talk about unchaining our love, Santita, it begins, everything begins with our relationship with ourselves.
But so when you talk about, see, I'm so excited. When I first heard about the term, I read Dr. Joy DeGruy Leary's book.
She wrote a book about 10 years after we did what Mama couldn't tell us about love.
Your book.
Yes.
Because you've always started with slavery for the African American experience and for the American experience.
Yes.
Aside from Native Americans who were almost wiped out.
Completely
And we can never forget
genocided
that.
off the planet.
We can never forget
Yes,
that.
and the thing that's
what is PTSS?
PTSS, in the clinical terminology I would use as a clinician, is post-traumatic stress syndrome. Now, we've changed the diagnosis to PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. We've dropped the D, and now with our veterans coming back with such high levels of stress, it's now called PTS. Either way you cut it, we as Americans are suffering from PTSS, post-traumatic slave syndrome. And I want to say two things. Number one, when we wrote our book with Brenda Richardson and I, what Mama couldn't tell us about love, healing the emotional legacy of slavery. Now, that was our original title. We had all the black publishers say to us, slavery has nothing to do with us. And I was sitting here as a clinician, having worked with so many well-educated, intelligent African Americans, and I could see the common thread. I could see it. And then
What did you see?
What I could see was there was a way that we would get so far in our relationships, or so far with our health, or our success, or our money, and then something would go terribly wrong.
Like a self-sabotage?
Self-sabotage, thank you. Because remember, our relationship with ourself is the cornerstone. That's why you and I are going to do Unchain Your Love, because it begins with me loving me, you loving you, you loving you. Because if we can't love ourselves, how can we love another? How can we let somebody else really, truly into our hearts? And self-worth equals net worth.
Wow.
Even people with high net worth, if the self-worth is low, they'll sabotage, or they won't let themselves enjoy it fully.
And that's what I'm seeing with black people, with African Americans.
Yes.
And with white Americans too, because you can't be three-fifths human without you being
That's
seven-fifths
right.
human. It's a perversion
That's right.
of our humanity, both of our humanities.
Exactly.
That having been said, when you see African Americans, how does slavery impact us today? When I was on the radio for 5 years, when I would talk about this, many people who were younger than I would call in angrily and say, I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to talk about slavery. It has nothing to do with me.
Right. People don't understand. See, we heard that over and over when we wrote What Mama. And we
Couldn't
assumed
tell us
what
about
Mama couldn't
love.
tell us about love. We assumed a black publisher would buy the book. Our first book had come out, Love Lessons, under Amistad Press. HarperCollins New York bought the book. And the woman who bought it called me. She said, Dr. Wade,
Which, of course, is a big mainstream, white
really
press,
big publisher, very big. And she said, I want to tell you why I bought your book. I said, I would love to know, because nobody else would buy it from the black press. She said, I'm Jewish. She said, my family came from Europe and they survived the Holocaust. And when I read your book, she said, I recognized everything happening in my family. Santita, when she said they'd survived the Holocaust, I've been saying for years, we went through a Holocaust, but we don't call it that.
They did it 12 years, we did it more than 250 years.
That's right.
And if I may say, I've got to say a special shout out to a very dear friend of ours who just made his transition. He was nearly 100 years old. Hank Schwab, Jewish American, who came over, who escaped the Holocaust.
Yes.
I could tell you where he sat at the push meeting every Saturday morning and breadbasket, God rest his soul. And my brother asked him, and I asked him, why is it that you are here every Saturday without fail? He said, I became active in the civil rights struggle because when I was in Germany, when I moved to the United States, I said, oh my goodness, what black people are experiencing is what I just left.
Yes. Yes, people can see the connection. And the other thing I want to add, when you said that we're broken, that slavery broke something in us, I got that right in my face. I was on an assignment for Essence magazine in Senegal, and I was talking with our guide. His name was Abdul Sula. And I said, Abdul, how do you see us as African Americans? He said, he said, Sister Doctor, I understand why you're the way you are. I said, what do you mean the way we are? I was a little defensive about our people.
Yes.
He said, oh, no, I don't mean any offense. He said, you're us, but you were taken away from us. He said, we talk about you over here. We don't know how you survived. He said, I wouldn't have survived. And when he said that to me, it confirmed and affirmed, but it also broke my heart, because I knew it was true. You can't go through a Holocaust and not talk about it, not get any healing. And this is part of the healing, to be able to talk about it with you, Santita.
But to give it a name.
Give it a name.
Because it's affirming.
That's right.
For this legacy.
That's right.
To have a name.
A name.
I feel like, when I think of my great-grandmother, who we just buried, oh my goodness, I don't want to cry, 16 years ago, I feel like her pain has been given a name.
Yes.
My grandmother, my father's mother, who refused to look at roots.
Right.
She said, do you know why we look as we do? Because I remember the episode in which Kizzy was raped. How infuriating. It was so infuriating to America. I remember that the news anchor on Good Morning America stepped out of his role and spoke to America. He said, I know this is inappropriate, but I have to say something, because Roots shook us to our roots, our foundation.
That's right. Still the most watched miniseries ever in the history.
And they won't play it again.
Yeah. Now, the thing that's so important is, because my role as a psychologist is healing, the first step is, as you said, when we reveal, we can heal. When we speak our truth.
As you say.
Well, thank you.
Right.
When we speak our truth, it gives us a path forward, because the truth does set you free.
But what did we
experience? It starts
experience?
the energy moving. What we experienced was an invalidation of our humanity. We experienced a systematic form of brutality that brainwashed us. If you lie to anybody long enough, they start thinking it's the truth.
Of course you do.
That we weren't worthy, we weren't deserving, we weren't even human. We didn't deserve to have our loved ones stay with us. We didn't deserve to even keep our own children. So when we look at the levels of child abandonment, when we look at the levels of people breaking apart, the divorce rate in the general community, maybe 50%. Our community, for those who bother to get married, it's 69%. But see, with all of that, what I want to say to everybody, Santita, is we can heal, and there is a cure.
So when you hear in this current political and cultural discourse in America, when you hear the question, what is wrong with black
Oh,
people?
I'm so tired of people asking me that.
Well, it's
All the
infuriating to
time.
me
Yes.
because everyone understands everybody else's pain
Yeah.
but ours.
Everyone understands how the Holocaust, we have a book called The Holocaust. We have a book called Children of the Holocaust. We have a book called Grandchildren of the Holocaust, and we're coming up on great-grandchildren. But there is no book that says grandchildren of enslaved people, Holocaust. Okay, that's where we have to say, because this is what most people don't understand. If I am your mother and I have wounds that came from my mother and I haven't healed them, I'm going to pass them to you.
Even if she did not share, when I saw the movie The Joy Luck Club,
Right.
These mothers had walled off their pain from their daughters.
But it came through.
It
It
was
came
shocking to
through
these
in
mothers.
their tone of voice. It came through in the way they looked at the daughters, the anger, the rage.
How does that translate into the black
For
experience?
us, when we beat our children, that comes from slavery. When husbands beat their wives, abandon their children, when we think it's good for our child. I have argued with so many people because I'm all over the research, Santita. When you beat a child, you destroy the child's sense of autonomy over their own body. You destroy their self-esteem. You destroy their sense of self-love. But we firmly believe this is good because it's all we know. But you know what I discovered? In intact African communities, families stick together.
Absolutely.
They support each other. They eat out of the same pot. They live in the same house as a communal family, and they do not beat their children. I was in shock. I was waiting for somebody to smack a child. I was like, oh my God.
And they look at us as
That's enslavement.
if we are uncivilized
Yeah.
for doing.
But they understand. It's the slavery sickness. So one of the
you said
places
it's
to
the
begin.
slavery sickness.
Yes, one of the places to begin is I was beaten as a child. My parents came from the deep south. My dad came from a place in Louisiana so far back in the woods they pump in daylight. And they take a lunch to the mailbox. Okay, that's way back in the woods. Okay, so I don't fault my parents because they didn't know any better.
But they
But when
knew
we-
how to survive,
Yes, right.
And this is what we were trying to do.
Survive. But the next generation, we've got to do better than survive. We have to thrive and break those enslavement patterns. It all begins with self-love. To see the beauty in yourself. Do you know how many African American women, especially, I have worked with over my many years teaching classes and seminars who say to me, well, just because I'm so ugly and so stupid, I'm like, whoa, if you say that about yourself, the brain is a programmable tool. The brain goes, okay, you're ugly. And I used to think that way. I used to think I was ugly and stupid.
Really?
Because growing up, I was beaten and I was black, and I thought the two kind of went hand in hand. So we have to reprogram these brains. And the first thing, can I do a healing tool real quick? Do this with me. Tap right here on the sternum. I don't want to drive our sound engineer crazy.
It's going to drive him crazy.
Okay.
I know that.
Sorry, David. All right, so tap right here. And when we tap right here on the sternum, there's a little gland right under it that produces a hormone that regulates our heartbeat, slows the heart down, helps the heart to dump stress, and because the heart has memory, it activates heart memory. Keep going. Takes 60 seconds.
Oops. I know
You
that's
can't
gonna
do it.
drive him crazy.
Drives.
I'm so
it takes.
sorry.
Okay, you can't
Quentin,
tap, but I will.
I can't do that because I'm
I'll
driving
tap.
the crew crazy.
I'll tap. All right, so what happens when everybody at home can do it with us? When we tap and the heart slows down, now whatever you say to yourself, you can put your heart in it. So everyone's going to say with us, I am worthy.
I am worthy.
And I am deserving.
And I am deserving.
And I love me.
And I love me.
Unconditionally.
Unconditionally.
Now, if you do that over and over and over, and you can make it a little chant, I am worthy, I am deserving, I love me unconditionally. And I have a whole little rhythm and vibration I put there. The brain goes, oh, the heart's remembering something new. The brain gets with the heart. That's called wisdom. When head and heart work together. New wisdom, self-love.
Let's talk about this. We're going to expand the panel and look at this theologically with Bishop Allison Abrams and legally with attorney Linda Bernard, because PTSS, post-traumatic slave syndrome, it's with us, but the gospel is the truth. The good news is that we can heal, because we are revealing it today on the Santita Jackson Show.
Here's Santita's Up Close with a one-on-one interview.
Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. Do you have PTSS, post-traumatic slave syndrome? Well, yes, we all do. We all do. And we can get well. We can do more than survive. We can thrive. We've been talking with America's good love doctor, Dr. Brenda Wade, about this topic, about the post-traumatic slave syndrome. Joining us to give us the theological perspective on this, of course, is Bishop Allison Abrams. The legal perspective, as we are losing rights left and right. Attorney Linda Bernard. I mean, it's amazing. She's won several cases before the Michigan State Supreme Court. She's one of the premier civil rights activists, and just politically, we're seeing so much. I'm seeing, I must say, you know, I'm from the church. I'm seeing titilators and not liberators in the pulpit now. It's become, you know, and I love a great church service, but I do know that we got our schools, we got our freedoms through men and women. Sojourner Truth was an evangelist, who were free enough to preach the good news and restore us so that we would not continue to absorb these assaults.
It was preaching as well as action.
Absolutely.
It's that combination of being politically active too.
It inspired you to get active.
Exactly right.
You know, because you have to, in order to deal with the Klan or with someone telling you, giving you a literacy test. So, I mean, just post-traumatic slave syndrome.
Or saying you have to have identification in order to vote. Let's just bring it right to present day.
Well, I have two things I want to say on that.
When you hear it, does it make any sense to you?
Yeah, I think one of the things that has possibly shut down the pulpit or the proclaimers of the gospel is the separation of church and state. You know, a lot of times people feel like, okay, well, I'm not supposed to deal with the political side of things, what's going on here. I'm just simply supposed to proclaim the gospel and just preach and draw in souls and, you know, continue to preach and teach the word of God. However, you can't leave out the side that says we have to help our people and continue to stand up for rights and fight for rights and be activists. And
Jesus was an activist.
That's what Jesus
Yes.
did.
Jesus was an activist.
Jesus
a lot of
wasn't killed
churches
because
don't
he
have
threw
the social
flowers.
justice
That's
ministries.
right.
Jesus was killed. That was a state killing.
That's right.
Yes.
He was a political activist.
Because he was what some people termed a zealot.
That's
Yes.
right.
Because he spoke to an oppressed people. He was
Yes.
a part of an oppressed minority, so much so that his parents had to hide him in Egypt because they were going to kill him.
But once again, you have the text where people were ingrained with this in their minds. Slaves, obey your master. I just want to throw this out. What did that mean?
I'm from a liberation theology
Right,
background,
you are,
so
but
I
I'm
just,
saying,
you know, I hear this and I throw up my
the
hands.
white man used this, once
right,
again,
as
the
an
Bible,
oppression tool.
to oppress our people.
But
And
we
so
use
they were
the
saying,
same
slaves,
Bible,
obey your master.
But we use the same
Yes.
Bible to get free.
But however, what did that mean? See, people have to understand the context in which something is said, what was meant by what was said. And actually, Paul was not saying it in that manner. He was saying, be so passionate about Jesus Christ and your following of Jesus Christ that you are a slave to that service and that commitment. It wasn't, okay, let somebody lord over you and you do everything that they say to do. It wasn't in that context. So once again, we've misused a scripture, a text, to oppress a group of people, and then people continued in that mindset. But also it says, he whom the Son sets free is free indeed. And so, you know, we've got to begin to preach that a little bit more, teach that a little bit more, and help people receive the liberation that they truly deserve to have. And so that's what I believe should be happening on today, but that's not really the word that's being released into the atmosphere.
It's got to be released legally. Post-traumatic slave syndrome. Do you think, does that resonate with you?
Yes, it does. But slavery based on race did not become part of our, if you will, our personhood until the 15th century. A man by the name of Gouverneur wrote a treatise on the inequality of the races. There was always slavery. I mean, the Greeks were slaves to the Romans, and slavery was based on conquest, but it wasn't based on race. And you could always buy your way out, or Socrates. I mean, the
or
great
marry
learners.
into the people that
Right,
you were captured
right.
by.
I mean, you could always do that until this issue regarding the inequality of the races. And that really justified the colonization of Africa by Western Europe, including South Africa and the French and the Portuguese and the this and that. Everyone who came in justified the oppression of Africans based on Gobineau's treatise. So, yes, it does resonate with me. But it resonates with me even more today, Santita, because of what just happened in Detroit. For the last 40 years, of course, Detroit has had an African-American mayor, starting with Mayor Coleman Young. And now, in this past election, a white man won as a mayor for the city of Detroit. And it was a very interesting race because the man that ran that was African-American, Benny Napoleon, is a lawyer, former chief of police, now he's the Wayne County Sheriff, etc. But he lost, and he said something just a week ago that really resonated with me. And this is someone that you know well. He said that he was on the security detail for Nelson Mandela when he was in Detroit. He appeared here at Old Tiger Stadium like 15 years, 20 years ago. I went. I remember walking and going to see Nelson Mandela and how proud I was. And he said he and Nelson were in the back room before Nelson came out to speak. And he asked Nelson, because he was a proud African-American man here from Detroit, he said, how did you ever get apartheid in South Africa? Meaning, how could so many black people accept apartheid? He said Nelson turned to him and he said, we stopped believing we could govern ourselves. In other words, your father says it differently. He says if there are two people selling ice, a black man here, a white man here, somehow the white man's ice is colder.
That's what we think we've been programmed to think that way.
Right, because of the slavery dimension that you're speaking
I'm going to lean right over because this is hitting your microphone, and I know that we're going to have a problem.
Thank you.
So, I mean, it was, and he asked in terms of his plea to Detroiters, don't hold my race against me. It was amazing. 85% of the people in Detroit are African American.
Wow.
But
Because
everywhere you went, we need a white man. We need a white man.
Well, because
just
the
like in South
narrative
Africa.
is in America still that white people know
More than we.
The myth,
you can just
myth.
put the ellipsis.
Yes.
Dot.
There's a book that's being taught at University of California, Berkeley, a class called The Myth of White Privilege. The myth. And that it's based on exactly what you said, this belief that somehow inherently, because people have pink skin and they're from Europe, they're smarter or they're better. And the truth is, when my trip to Africa, the first thing I learned is how hardworking and how intelligent all of our African brothers and sisters are. And I see the same thing here in our community. When we're given a chance, boom, we go straight through. That's why affirmative action was dismantled.
But that's why you also talked about the self-sabotage.
That's right.
Because when I think of my father
we don't
saying,
believe it.
oh, you have to pound into the signs that Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King was carrying just before he was killed. I am a man.
I am a man.
And interestingly enough, this is something that I came across. See, it's the little subtle things that are given to us. When Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King was killed, the cover of Newsweek, April 15th, 1968, 2 weeks after he was killed, they did not have a portrait of Dr. King. They had a black woman crying over him in the casket, which sent the signal that the civil rights movement was over.
Dead.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so now we don't kill you. We're not going to have another martyr, but we isolate you.
That's correct.
And we isolate ourselves. This is one of the things I have to say, because we bought into this idea that we were inferior. We bought into the idea that we should obey the massa, and massa was white. We isolate ourselves in our own families, in our own communities, because this leads to black on black crime, everything else that we see.
But the fact is, most people, race, should I say crime, homicide is interracial. People kill folks
because
if they know.
People, if I believe
So, but I'm saying
inferior,
whites
and you
kill
look
whites.
like me,
Well, I guess I'm trying to get to this point.
Yes.
Whites kill whites.
I understand.
Blacks kill blacks.
it's an access
That's
in
it.
terms of,
But that said, though, it seems to me we won't go after white people, but we go after each other.
Yes.
You know,
It's because of how we feel about ourselves. And on top of it, we have the laws out here sending, mass incarceration. I was just with Van Jones. He's working to end mass incarceration and the damage it's done to our community.
What is the damage?
The damage is families being ripped apart,
Right,
hearts
right.
being broken,
Right.
people not having their loved one with them, the loved one going away and being isolated and treated like an animal, and then parents and family members knowing that this is happening for so many. This is the only country in the world that has
but
this
I think
kind
the
of
damage
incarceration.
is even greater than that. I think the damage is even larger in the sense that we expect crime from black people. I mean, whenever a white person commits a crime and they're really trying to get, well, a black person did it. I saw a black person leaving. I mean, crime is colorized, and that hurts
right.
and we also are victims of that.
Right.
People we talked about Trayvon Martin and so forth, but we also discriminate against people who have a hood, who have their pants sagging, et cetera, et
That's
cetera.
right.
So there's this paradigm now that has put us outside of the majority.
But if I may say this, there's a diminished expectation
That's
that we
correct.
have of each other.
That's
Correct.
right.
If, when we walk into some place that looks spectacular, well, now this has got to be white. My question, come on, wait a minute. The expectation, we have an upcoming show with America's Love Doctor, Good Love Doctor, Dr. Brenda Wade, in which we're going to talk about love licenses. I read this, black children now don't have the expectation that marriage, that they're going to get married.
That's right. And stay married if they do.
There's another study that came out that said that black boys have a better time assimilating in suburban schools. Why? Because black girls are ghetto. And white girls and white guys think that black guys are cool.
Yes.
All of this to me is part of post-traumatic
Yes, it is.
slave syndrome.
But look at it at Barney's this past week. You're involved with that, certainly. I know your dad is, et cetera.
I'm not involved with that. I mean, come on. Why would
but-
and I don't know why people continue to shop at a place when they don't respect your dollars. Are you joking me? Really?
Correct.
Yes, I said that. I don't get that.
Yeah,
Because I feel good enough about myself, to acknowledge that we have post-traumatic slave syndrome.
Yes. And
See,
it takes
because
courage to
we
just
do,
admit
and
the
they
truth.
to give it a
Yes.
name, because everyone comes to us and they say, "Oh, you need to get over it." Huh?
No, there's no such thing as getting over trauma. If that was possible, we wouldn't have the highest number of suicides with veterans than we've ever seen in history. If that were possible to just snap our fingers and say, I've put that behind me, how I wish it were true, Santita.
You don't think black people have put this behind us?
Of course not.
White people haven't either.
Of course
Look
not.
at Barney's.
Neither. Nobody has. And I was just training at San Francisco General Hospital, training some medical professionals, and I just said, we're all racist.
Watching this edition of the Santita Jackson Show.